Talking. We've had some really great conversations the past couple of months where we've got to hear directly from customers about how they are addressing challenges that are happening in the market, how they're still being successful. And I think we sort of realize that there's a great opportunity for all of you to hear directly from practitioners that are on the ground. I think one of the things that we also want to talk about is just the realities of the hiring market and what the challenges are with the hiring market, and then kind of recognizing that, but then what you do about it. So that's really what we are here to do. We're going to dig into some data as well, to really kind of like give you that perspective. Before we start talking about anything, I did just want to do a few logistics. As always, this session is being recorded. So if you have to, I know we're all very busy people, so if you need to walk away, it'll be recorded, and we will email it out to everyone. After this, everyone has been using chat wonderfully. We also have we'll have questions Q&A at the end, so you can submit questions there as well. And so just, please feel free to communicate with us, but also with other people on the webinar. We are going to have a conversation, but I did just want to share, in addition to the recording, we will be sharing out a one pager afterwards, which will kind of have the insights. We talk about some of the high level data as well as kind of like a core best practice to kind of go along with that insight. So you're always welcome to take notes, but also know that we're going to be sharing information with you afterwards as well. So hopefully my Wi-Fi is okay. It looks a little jumpy. But now what I'd love to do is bring up my wonderful panelists, and give them an opportunity to introduce themselves. So Gabby, Robin, Tamalyn, if you want to join. Gabby, let's start with you. We have such a great panel. I think you're going to learn so much from them, and I wanted to just give them a couple of minutes to share a bit about themselves. If you could just share, obviously, your name, your role, the organization, and then anything you want to share about your background or kind of the roles that you're hiring for, that would be great. Gabby, let's start with you.
Yes, thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Gabriela Poineau. I am the Vice President of People and Culture for ARK Hospitality. We are a hotel management company and we have properties all across the United States. My role focuses on our people strategy, including talent, culture, engagement, and just the overall team member experience. I'm super excited to be here and I appreciate the opportunity to be part of this panel. So thank you so much for having me.
Of course, of course. Robin, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Robin Reed, and I am the Chief Operations Officer for Twinkle Nanny Agency Franchise Systems. And uniquely, I'm also a franchisee of the same system. And one of the things that we do is hiring and placing nannies. So we're constantly hiring and constantly troubleshooting what's going on in the market. Um, and so, yeah, I am just very appreciative of being here as well. So thank you again, Carmen, and to the Wizehire team.
Thank you. Tamalyn, tell them about you.
Yes. Okay. Hello, I'm Tamalyn. I'm the customer marketing manager at Wizehire. But my background is really rooted in working directly with small businesses on hiring because I started at Wizehire as a coach more than 7 years ago. So I've spent a lot of time helping employers just, improve their results, improve their job posts, evaluate candidates, and figure out why maybe hiring is not working out the way they expected. So now I focus on customer education using all of that background, and bringing the customer perspective into our marketing and product and overall strategy. So, yeah, on the panel today, I'll mostly be helping connect the market data that Carmen's going to talk about to what small businesses can actually do in their own process to try to help. So I'm excited.
Yeah, thanks. If you guys are getting our education series, you are hearing directly from Tamalyn, and she's also the face of a lot of our content on social media, so you might recognize her. I posted her just on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram today. Uh, So the way we kind of structured this is like I'm gonna sort of like introduce some market data, kind of talk about it. We'll sort of get some perspectives on what it's like, what people are seeing on the ground, and then we'll talk a little bit about best practices. So again, feel free to kind of share information. Because I have so much data, I have a lot of notes here. Typically, I try to be really kind of like present and looking, but I am going to be looking down at my notes because I can't remember all the data. Well, the first kind of like set of market data I wanted to talk about, and this is something that obviously we've talked about before, is just what's happening broadly in the hiring market. So US job openings are actually up. They jumped from 6.9 million to 7.6 million in April 2026. But at the same time, actual hires fell. So more job opening, fewer hires. So at first glance, you would think that more openings and more applications in particular, because we're also seeing more applications, would make hiring easier. But that does not seem to be what most employers are experiencing. So there are more applicants, more openings, but hiring still feels harder. Robin, I want to start with you. When you hear these numbers, when you hear that insight, does that match kind of your experience and what you're seeing on the ground?
Yes, definitely. We have the same amount of positions that we always have. And we've pretty much spent this first and second quarter trying to troubleshoot hiring because we're struggling to get qualified people in the door. There's also it just is requiring more time than we've really ever experienced as far as chasing candidates, following up. Um, and like I always joke about, I feel like, why am I begging you to work this job that you applied for? But that is the nature of what we're experiencing, and we are just trying to work through it. And again, just putting more people on our team to create the follow up and get them to continue through the process so we can try to, win them over.
Yeah. Gabby, what has your experience been?
Yeah, so ours is very similar too, and because we're all over the United States, we're in some of like the bigger markets, but we're also in some that are very small. And we see like on the bigger ones that we get all these applicants, but the problem is they may not be qualified.
Mm,
And then in the smaller ones, like we're just not getting enough applicants.
at
So we
all.
see both.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, I mean, what we have historically talked about here at Wizehire is kind of like the quantity issue and the quality issue. And it felt like for a long time the challenge was too many applicants, but not enough qualified. And we've seen more recently that it's been more of a quantity issue. Um, Tamalyn, if a business has open positions and applicants coming in, but still aren't seeing hires come from it, what is the thing that you would actually have them take a look at?
Yeah. So the first thing I would look at is where candidates might be getting stuck. So a lot of employers will think they have an applicant problem, but sometimes it's actually more like a decision or a process problem. So are the applicants truly unqualified or are they sitting too long without review? Are hiring managers all aligned? Is the whole team that's doing the hiring aligned on what is needed? Is the job description, you know, perfection? Is it attracting the right person? Are interviews happening like rapidly? In a slower, more cautious market, the people that are winning at hiring are the ones that are clear on what they need and very fast when they find someone promising. And if you're saying we are aligned, my job description is perfect, we're moving fast, then maybe it's a sourcing more than a process problem. So the right people may not be seeing your role or the channels being used aren't reaching them. And that's where it's worth expanding beyond job boards and thinking more intentionally about where your ideal candidates will come from, which is something that we're going to talk about a little bit later in the
Yeah.
conversation. Yeah.
Um, Gabby, when we talked earlier, you also talked about um, how you were kind of cutting through like some of the volume of candidates and your use of things like screening questions. Has that been a useful tool, and like how have you kind of leveraged that?
Yes, that has been really helpful once we figure out that that was an option. So having that screening question and that helps you sort the like it'll go to that line where it says they're more qualified, and that has been helpful. Sometimes like our brands have different what do you call this? A Marriott where it's like an economy stay or a higher Marriott, and having that the applicants know exactly what type of hotel it is, what brand, and that they have the Hilton experience, and those has been really helpful to kind of figure out what kind of candidates we can interview.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, especially when you're dealing with so many brands. Um, So you talked about speed, Tamalyn, and the importance of like for the process and like people who know what they want, which is something that we've heard before. You have to be very clear on that, and then responding to speed. How can people help like prevent great candidates from slipping through the cracks?
Yeah, so I think if you're looking for you want to identify the candidates worth spending time with really quickly, right? That's the way that you move quick. So I think about it in three layers usually, and it's fit, motivation, and logistics. So fit is whether they have those core skills or traits needed to to be successful. And Disc Plus, I will shout out Wizehire here. Disc Plus is a huge driver of highlighting those traits. Motivation is whether they're genuinely interested in the kind of work environment and everything, growth opportunities that you're offering. And then logistics are practical availability, location, compensation, alignment on compensation and schedule. And so this is where like screening questions, like Gabby just pointed out, and Scout Talent Match, Wizehire Scout Talent Match helps look through these layers and identify the applicants to focus on so that you can move very, very rapidly.
Yeah. We have Scout from Wise and then we have Wise Scout. So I want
Yeah, yeah.
to make that distinction.
There's a person and a thing. Yes,
Yeah, both
yes.
Robin and Gabby work with our wonderful scout. Let's go to the second insight. So the second insight is around how employers are reacting to this. We were hearing a lot about this idea of employers raising the bar, and the insight is employers are not just raising the bar. Maybe they aren't even raising the bar, but they are reacting to a new labor market. And the data that we saw that really spoke to that is we were looking at some Indeed data, and they reported that job searches, slower hiring, and weaker labor demand is expected all throughout 2025. So essentially, and we've talked about this, I think we talked about this in our January or February webinar, we are in a low hire, low fire scenario where quits are low, and employers are taking longer to hire. And so I think the perception is that employers are simply raising the bar, but it feels like what's actually happening is that businesses are taking longer because the market has changed. So, Gabby, I want to start with you on this one. What, how have you sort of adapted to these changes, or how is it affecting your approach to the hiring market? Like, do you feel like your organization at ARK has raised the bar, or do you feel like you're simply kind of have to rethinking how you are hiring or how you define success?
Yeah, so I think we have been very intentional the past few years about the way we approach this in our process. And our culture is super important to us. And so we have make sure that that is the process from the very beginning, the way that we post our positions, where we have the templates and the feel is the same no matter what property you're applying. But I don't think that we are necessarily raising the bar here. Like we are just wanting to like make sure that we get the right candidate, but it's not something where the we're not training like the skill set like that we can train, but
Yeah.
soft skills like their willingness to learn, their the way that they show up on time, just those things we're looking at.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Robin, what's your take? Do you think employers are raising the bar, or what are you sort of experiencing?
Yes, I don't know specifically if we are yet, but I think that that is part of the resolution that I've come to over the last couple months in our industry is that we need to focus a little bit on increasing compensation, throwing
Mhm.
that out there. I with inflation is definitely a thing that we really can't ignore. And I know for employers that's hard to, especially if we aren't seeing the quality equal the higher compensation. But I think it goes hand in hand, increasing compensation and also diving into your culture. Like in all of us, we all have competitors in our industry. And there's going to be things they like and that they dislike about us versus, our competitor. But that's where the culture that Gabby was talking about kind of comes in is like, what can you do within your culture to set yourself apart from your competitor, so that maybe they leave that the other company to come to you because they know that you're going to be treating them well. Like it, and when I mean culture, that doesn't often, it doesn't have to be a monetary incentive. It can just be the way you treat your employees, or just doing more that makes them feel a part of something. I think that also is something that we're seeing, that the more people feel a part of something, they will exhibit more autonomy and maybe exhibit these characteristics that we're struggling with, which is, it's important to be on time, it's important to show proactiveness, all these things that are underlying outside of your general experience. So, yeah, I definitely think that all of that is kind of working together. And it's something that all of us as employers are going to have to do to um, leverage the hiring struggle that we're experiencing.
Yeah, I
Can I add something, Carmen? I love everything that Robin said. And for us, like our culture, like that's one of the benefits that we advertise. Like but I did want to touch on like the compensation, because that's also that something that we're seeing. But what we find helpful is when we go into a new market, I can call the human scout, who's our account manager, and say, hey, can you give me a market analysis for this? I'm going into this new market. Even for the current ones, I love that it's an option that we have, and it has come very helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. I actually hate that we have to say human scout now. I was in a conversation yesterday and I was like, the human coaches. And I was like, that's where we are. Um, um, so I'm hearing a lot about soft skills. Like Gabby kind of referred to this idea of like there are things that we can train for, and there are things we want people to show up with. How do you think employers could actually distinguish between like must-have versus nice to have when they are thinking about evaluating candidates?
Was that to me? I'm
Yes,
sorry.
Tamalyn,
Yes.
sorry about that.
Yes, that's okay. Yeah, honestly, the framework matters less than just having an idea at all. So, what I'm seeing with Wizehire customers who hire well is that they've defined what good looks like to them, good looks like a good hire looks like to them before they even post the job. So, not while they're sorting through applicants, but well before, so that when you are evaluating candidates reactively, great people get overlooked because there's no consistent lens that you're looking through. So, the first step is deciding in advance what are the two or three things most core important that would make someone a very clear yes. Then you're screening towards something specific instead of just filtering out obvious no's. And then the second, again, I have to harp is response time. So in this market, great candidates are fielding options. They're like applying many, many places. And the people that I love, love, love that y'all said culture and compensation, because the people that are competitive in their compensation and that are actually describing and being honest about their culture and what they have to offer are the ones that are getting the best results and then working quickly to make sure because people are catching on, so other people are also posting competitive compensation and they're also talking more about their culture. So you've got to just move fast and because there's a good chance that people will move on if you don't reach out quickly. So yeah,
I
don't
love
move
that.
slow,
I like
move fast.
the idea that you're sharing here, at least what I took away from it, Tamlin, is like you need to figure out why someone is a yes and not just trying to figure out why someone is a no.
Yeah.
And I think that's important. Um, so the third insight we're going to talk about is the best candidates may not be actively looking. And I've been working in kind of like the HR tech space for a long time, and we talk a lot about this idea of active and passive candidates. And I already alluded to some of this data a bit, but the quits rate is actually quite low right now. So it's near its lowest point since 2020. So people are cautious. They're not as willing to leave a job opportunity than they were previously, um, which isn't, sort of like at the individual level necessarily a bad thing, but, lower turnover, it will create stability for employers. But it also means that there are fewer experienced candidates that are actively looking. Um, so that can make the available candidate pool feel pretty thin right now. Um, Robin, I'm gonna kick it over to you first to talk a little bit about, what you are seeing as far as like how you define experience in your sort of like category, and if you've seen changes in the way that you've sort of assessed what makes someone a good experienced candidate.
Yeah, for sure. So for us, our baseline is a couple years of childcare background that can be specific to an in-home nanny, or it could be somewhere in any other childcare space. And we've kind of had to get creative with because there aren't a lot of um, nannies, in-home nannies that are leaving positions or that are looking for new ones. So because of the lack of the seasoned qualified people already in a role that may be looking for a new one, we have to kind of go outside the realm and find people that have various childcare experience that translates well into the home. And that kind of goes back to what Gabby, we've talking about, like what can be kind of coached and what do you need to come with a candidate. But as far as their experience, I mean, it's been tough to kind of work through that, but we are seeing some success by branching out and seeing what skills they would have that would translate in.
Yeah. Um, Gabby, you're in a function where I'm I'm guessing, Robin, that the majority of your hiring is primarily for like nanny roles. Gabby, you're in a position where you are hiring across a wide swath of different, like from housekeepers to general managers to, auditors to all the different things. Like, how do you sort of think about this given kind of that, purview?
Yeah. Yes, so yes, exactly. Like we have positions that are high turnover, and for those, we don't require a ton of experience because we can teach those positions. Now, for a general manager, we do like ask for a little bit more in anything for an above property role too. So we do have all of the areas where we have different qualifications requirements. So yeah.
And have you found that, I know we talked a little bit for sort of like, housekeeping roles or kind of certain roles, like is a little bit more in terms of like, they're showing up on time. I mean, obviously you want someone in a guest service role to be a certain way.
Yes.
Like, how does that, is it a similar thing when you're hiring for sort of like I would call I think most people might call them corporate roles, but I think you all call them maybe support roles.
Yeah, we call ourselves the support team for the
Yeah.
hotels because that's truly who we are. We're supporting them. But for the line level, the hotel level, those are the roles where we see where we schedule the interviews and they don't show up. Like we get a lot of that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That is interview no shows definitely has been a pretty big challenge. I think across the board, like we've seen that
Mm.
like all like across the board. Um, Tamalyn, what are some practical ways you think that folks can actually attract candidates that might not be attract candidates who are not actively looking and searching for jobs like every day?
Yeah, so passive. You've just got to make it really easy for someone to picture that your opportunity is better than where they are, even if they're not looking at all. So that starts obviously with your job post. It has to be clear about why the role is worth considering and moving. So, compensation, obviously, but talk about the schedule, talk about your culture, talk about growth, flexibility, obviously, any benefits. And then people like to know what success actually looks like in the role. So, and this is becoming, more commonplace in job posts, but if you're missing any of that, you gotta get that in there. And then I'd also encourage businesses to re-engage their past strong applicants. So, if you have a pipeline, keeping it warm, keeping up with folks that maybe were a great fit, but just not right at the time, or somebody else was better. Keep in touch with those people, and then ask your current employees, for referrals. So they're your best bet. I think there is a statistic like employee referrals are like the longevity of that hire is something astronomically. I can't remember the actual. We're talking about data, and I can't remember the actual statistic. Maybe we'll throw it into the post, the recap. But yeah, employee referrals are our choice, and we do have a blog with some tips on employee referrals, like an employee referral kit, if you will, as
Yeah.
well, that people can check out.
And
Yeah,
I want
we
to
see, sorry, Carmen. We do see some success with this. So I would encourage any employers out there to come up with some type of a referral incentive. I always say generally the rule of thumb is good people know good people. Um,
Hmm.
and we want them to feel like this is a family, like invite your friend, and then you guys can, this also brings in the flexibility, like maybe you can't make a shift and they can, or something, like you can ultimately work together to build with us like your own referral network, by bringing in people that you know, but tying some monetary um incentive there has really proved to help us as well in some of the desperate times.
Yeah, I like that. And the thing I think to your point about good people knowing good people is also like um you are only like I'm thinking about myself. I'm not gonna put my name in support of someone that I don't feel like is a really solid candidate also. So I think, that's or someone that I think is gonna be hired, especially if there's a referral bonus, no matter what the monetary amount is. So I think that's a really good suggestion. Let's go to insight number 4. The time goes fast. We have 6 insights. We'll see if we get through all of them, but if not, they will be in the takeaway materials. Insight 4. Candidates are discovering and responding to jobs differently than they used to. One of the things that we see for sure is there's a lot of different sort of experiences with job boards now. So candidates still, it's still like one of the top sources, but like they're using job boards, but they're also using AI tools, mobile search, texting, referral, some of the things that we just talked about. Email may no longer be the primary way also of communication for a lot of these applicants. So if candidates are finding and responding to jobs differently, uh, what can employers do, or how do employers need to think about recruiting? Um, and it may not be enough to just post a job and wait. Some of the things we've been talking about is speed and responsiveness and things like that. Um, Gabby, I want to start with you. And I'm curious, and you also talked about interview no show, so I think this will be interesting. Like, how is engagement with your candidates? Are you seeing better engagement through text, direct outreach, refer? Like, how are you like sort of driving engagement and kind of getting that responsiveness?
Yeah.
Although it continues to be an issue, I know for everybody.
So we scout, and I just met a few weeks about this, and just to kind of strategize because we were not seeing so much, the response from them. So using like the texting option in Wizehire has been helpful, but they do it through email and phone calls, is the main thing. We do also started doing when we do have hard some markets that are really hard to find team members. We do a job fair
Oh,
that we've
Cool.
seen that it's been helpful in those areas that is hard to find.
oh, interesting. I
That's cool.
I feel like before the pandemic, hiring events were becoming kind of big and then they were less so. I'm gonna say this out loud. I think they're gonna come back. I think they're coming back. And I'll tell you more when we get to our next insight, but yeah, I have a theory there. Um, Robin, what are you saying? Like, are you saying that you are getting applicants from different places and spaces? Has it been pretty consistent? Are you seeing differences in terms of like communication and what people are sort of like how they're responding?
Yeah. So a couple things that are just intertwined into all that we've been talking about and to what Gabby was saying. We definitely experience no-shows, or lack of follow through at some point. So like to Tamlin's point of them falling through the cracks. I think in response to this, one of the things that we've done is that we're training our recruitment staff to do more follow up with the candidates. So even if they didn't schedule an interview or if they didn't show up, if we can get some type of contact to them to understand their choice and why, that gives us feedback as to how we can pivot. So even if somebody that you felt was qualified didn't apply or they no showed, I would encourage like asking them questions as to why, what chose, why did you decide to go elsewhere? What did you not read in our post that may have been more beneficial? Just because we need to be hearing from the candidates as to what they're looking for to be better. Um, and it's requiring more time on our part, but it's kind of the only way through. And texting, email, we've talked about this a lot. I think email is a thing of the past unless you're in a current position where you're required to use your email. And I think of it as even towards like our customers. If I need a response from my customer base and they're not in a day-to-day job where they're in their email, they might be in an Excel spreadsheet every day. Well, they're just not checking it. So I'm going to send them a text to say, hey, I put something in your inbox. So we're having to do a lot of that even with candidates. I think that's my favorite thing about the Wizehire platform is that we can use text for follow up, for your initial conversation, and we've seen success from people who have fallen through the cracks, but we revisit and follow up via text, and you're like, oh yeah, sorry, I forgot. I am interested or whatever. Another thing that we're seeing is with the introduction of AI, I don't think it's an introduction anymore. It's here to live and it's going to overtake. So I think we have to pivot our perspective to using it as a tool. Start using it more in your business if you're not already, and talk about your hiring in it, because the more that you're giving that platform, the more it's spitting out to other people when they're using it as an answer search engine. Um, and we're also seeing an increase of AI responses as far as their cover letter or just a simple intro. I've had a couple of people that have had near exact, responses where I can just imagine them say, "Can you write my cover letter?" And it spits out this. And these are young people that aren't editing it, they aren't doing any of that. They're just copying and pasting and submitting it.
Yeah.
So it's taking the time to say, like, okay, there is a whole human behind this. Let me find out, like, maybe they're doing the spray and play where they're just applying really quickly and pushing this out, but taking that time to not use that person as a no. Let me ask more questions. Let me engage with them to find out if they are, an actual candidate. But don't let that halt your screening process. Just because you're seeing that, I know it's frustrating and annoying, but you've got to read through it and just treat it as somebody who was trying to work more efficient, but maybe just didn't take their time to edit it to sound like a human. But I think that is just something we've also really it experienced that requires us, unfortunately, our time to dig deeper into getting the most qualified individuals.
Yeah, I agree. We're going to talk a little bit more about AI too after this, but I think what I would say is I agree with you, but maybe not if you're hiring for a lawyer.
That's very true. It is very role specific. And I hope anyone of that caliber is not. I hope that if you are a lawyer, then you are editing anything.
You would hope, yes, yes, yes.
Yes, for the record, I hope it is on the
Yeah,
record correctly as a
exactly,
human.
right. It's like that would be very, very, frightening. And I'm going to use the word frightening, but it is funny how easy it is to discern whether or not someone is actually using it.
And I think
Um,
it's a generational thing too. So even if
Mhm.
we don't want to miss that in a high caliber recruitment position for as such a, lawyers, physicians, whatever. But I I mean, it it shows some insight. So I think just, keeping it on the top of your mind that people are using AI and the younger generations aren't actually taught how to use it either. So they're not giving it the correct prompts to, get through that or to make it sound like them. So I think and I just say that because I think it is the younger generation working their way into the workforce. They're being, introduced to it in college and then coming out using it, but not using it the correct way.
Sorry, I had I saw the comment from Athena that they're saying that CPAs and attorneys are using it poorly.
Oh
Uh,
no.
That's
that's
wild.
um, we talk a lot. I mean, we've been talking about just kind of not being overly dependent on job boards in general because of so many of the things that have happened in the market. Um, Tamlin, if you were talking to someone and that is like the only thing that they're doing, like what are some other recruiting channels that you think that folks should be exploring?
Yeah, relying entirely on job boards today, it's not going to work. The job boards still matter, but they work better as part of like a broad strategy, right? So it's a piece of the puzzle. So we talked about employee referrals, obviously, past applicants, keeping those relationships warm, social media, obviously, local community groups. There are industry associations, there are trade schools, there are alumni groups, and even your customers and your vendors who know the business really well. Like those are, when you're hiring, literally anyone is a prospect, right? So, yeah, keeping that network and being really open to like any and everyone. And then also like Wizehire has career pages, so you can link those to your website. People that are interested in your company, they want to see your career page on your website. And if you don't have it there, it's really easy to add it from Wizehire. We also have QR codes. So if you have a physical location, hotels, Papa John's was successful with this, but you can print out like a flyer that's like, hey, want a job? like scan this and they can apply like that on their phone. So there's lots of, that's outside of a job board. Lots of avenues that should all be tapped with the market the way that it is right now.
And we're starting to hear more. I'm sure this has always been a practice, but I think especially now with kind of the rise of what people are calling ghost jobs or the perception that there are jobs that are being posted that are not always authentic, a lot of people are using career pages as a way to
Hmm.
validate that this is in fact a legitimate business with legitimate
That's right.
roles. Yes. And we also, oh yes, that's right. We have a new Chat GPT app. Thank you, Crystal. So we're seeing a lot more. I think you were kind of talking about the answer engines like ChatGPT and all the LLMs. We're seeing more and more kind of like conversations about hiring start in these LLMs like ChatGPT. So we launched a app where you can search for jobs right in ChatGPT with, in a very conversational way. So small, but I expect that this will be increasingly a way in which people will search for jobs. Um, my goodness. Okay, we started talking about AI. I want to talk about this really quickly because I think Robin already shared like some amazing insights just about how to leverage people, especially early career, who may not necessarily be using it always the right way. What we're seeing is that more than 40% of job seekers are using AI tools during their job search, with some studies showing adoption even over 50%. A significant portion of them are using it in their application process. At the same time, employers are also increasing their use of AI in the application process. We've joked that there's going to be this point where like my AI is talking to your AI, and that's going to be kind of how the world works. And so we're definitely seeing that this is creating potentially some challenges for folks. And Robin, you kind of shared a little bit about what you're saying, but Gabby, I'm curious if you are seeing this as much in your side of the house with folks who are using AI, or are you increasingly using AI in the process?
Yes, definitely. This is the big thing. If you're not looking into it, you should because it is the future. We do use it, but it's just for a tool. Like you still can't replace human judgment, right? Like we can use it for administrative tasks like scheduling and screening for like that minimum qualification. But still to like decide if it's a cultural fit, the emotional intelligence, and just that genuine connection. You still require people, but we are definitely looking into it a little bit more. I did have a similar experience as Robin, where the candidates are using AI for like their resume, and when you're looking at some really good resumes and then you're doing like the interview and you're asking questions, they can't really talk about it because they used AI to do the resume. And then that's what we find when we're reviewing
Mm,
resumes. They're like overly qualified, but then they can't speak and answer the questions. Yeah.
yeah. Robin, you've talked a little bit about this, but are you seeing anything additional that you wanted to share about kind of like the AI sort of piece?
Um, Not too much different than Gabby. I think it's fascinating that, I mean, it's unfortunately fascinating that we're seeing people not even be able to comment on their own experience because they don't know what AI wrote for them.
Yeah.
Which brings it back to the point of just filtering that. I mean, we have to ask questions. But I mean, we're seeing it more and more throughout our business and in all of our locations throughout the United States too. Um, but again, I think we're all learning kind of how to manage it. And, I think Gabby is expressing it pretty well as to what we're seeing equally.
Yeah. This was a little bit about why I sort of was thinking like some version of hiring events, whether they be online or in person, should come back because I do think that people are getting they're very sophisticated with like creating the resume, right, to really fit the role. But then you really have to have that conversation with them and to have like a quality interview to be able to suss them out. And I think at some point we're going to have to figure out how to quickly streamline that process to kind of have a path to sort of like assess someone, sort of virtually face to face or face to face to cut through some of that. I think the face to face piece is gonna just be such a driver of how you can really evaluate a quality candidate. Um, I'm going to open it up for questions, but I'm going to give Tamalyn an opportunity to kind of share about like, how you think about, either, I'll kind of leave it fairly open and just kind of like share some thoughts on like how people should be thinking about AI, whether it's like what they should automate or not automate, or how they can think about sort of like engaging with candidates.
Um, First of all, really quickly, thank you both for that. Like, I had never thought about using an interview to have to like suss out that kind of thing. And my wheels are turning about like a blog or some kind of education now, like how to do this, how to suss out the real applicants from AI. But yeah, I so if we're talking about what you should automate and what you shouldn't, I think it's been touched on really well already. But I would automate, obviously, like the repetitive follow-up pieces that will slow you down, that slow a lot of teams down, reminders, interview scheduling, you know, basic status updates, messaging. Obviously, people use it a lot for messaging. Those are perfect places for automation because they make you faster and more efficient. But obviously, again, the human judgment piece, never. I would never let AI make any real hiring decisions. And you can't automate away the relationship, right? So candidates still want to understand who they're about to work for, what the business values, and whether they can trust you, whether they can trust you and the opportunity. It's their future. It's their future too, right? So obviously, relationships can never be automated.
Yeah. I'm going to do a quick shout out to our automated phone screen product for a second. So this,
Oh,
yeah, so this is it is AI, but essentially you can kind of do a phone screen where people can kind of share information. And we have heard somewhat that people at least like to have the opportunity to kind of like express themselves. Like it doesn't feel like as much of a black hole. I think depending on the role, especially if you're, trying to assess whether or not someone is a good, well, maybe if they're like client facing, right? Like, and you might need them to have a certain type of just like communication skill set. It can be a way to kind of automate that, but also still kind of get a sense of that. Again, it's not going to be making any decisions for you, but you now have some tools depending on the volume of applicants you have. I want to open it up for questions. So please, like, keep in mind we have like two really seasoned practitioners here, and then we also have Tamalyn, who is working with customers every day. Feel free, and there might be questions in there. Okay, yes, there are. So Tamalyn, the first question is for you, but please, everyone, continue to put questions. Um, because Tamlin just mentioned benefits, what benefits are most effective in attracting and retaining employees? And I'm also curious, Rob and Gabby, to hear also what has been the most effective in your businesses for attracting and retaining employees. But Tamlin, what have you been seeing?
I mean, that really it varies across industries very widely, right? Because there are certain industries that just historically, notoriously have never offered things like health, healthcare benefits and things like that. They can't or they just don't. So I think it really depends on the industry. But these days, a lot of people really appreciate and want this generation. I think it's a generational thing that we're seeing, but they want a really healthy work-life balance. So flexible paid time off has become very, very popular and very attractive in the recent years. So obviously anything you can offer. put it out there. And that even like a great culture, I think, could be considered a benefit if that's what you've got. Talk about it. But yeah, things like paid time off, family leave, things like that. Definitely, if you can do it, make it flexible and open. Wizehire does, and we
Yeah.
love it. Yeah.
Robin, what are you sort of um, thinking about in terms of benefits for attracting?
Yeah, so one of the things that we hone in on is exactly what Tamalyn mentioned is flexibility. So it's another reason why we hire at such a high rate because we offer our customers and our candidates a backup option. Like we don't want somebody to not be able to take time off or miss something because they need to go to a doctor's appointment. Like we also have people who work long hours and they're covering childcare for people who, 60 hours a week. Like they still have to have a life. So that's one of the things that and in talking about this, it's what I'm going to go back and edit my job post on is just really honing in on the flexibility and allowing you to work as much or as little as you want in a sense of you know building your own schedule and our platform but also having the time to take care of your own family. And I think Tamlin probably has seen this, but I've heard over the last probably year or so that, or maybe it's a post-COVID thing, but that this is what they're valuing because, and that we are getting more out of the workforce by giving them this freedom and flexibility. Because they'll still, they'll make up for it elsewhere when they can. Most of my stuff you have to be in person for, but I assume for a lot of other roles, these professional fields, a CPA or an attorney can go finish some of the paperwork at home. If they choose to work from 8 to 10 after their kids are in bed, let them have that
Right.
time because they're going to do it and they're going to see the benefit of being able to pick up their kid or whatever they need to do, and replace it elsewhere. And I think that also allows for more retention of the candidates that we are hiring.
Yeah. Gabby, how are you? I mean, I know like for you all, culture is such a big driver of like what attracts and retains people. You guys have an amazing program. Um, you know, is there, yeah, like, so, I've kind of answered it somewhat, but like, what are you
Yeah.
sort of thinking about
So
as far?
yeah, we do also try to be very competitive with our benefits. And like Tamalyn said, in our hotel industry, a lot of times health insurance is not a thing, but we do offer that. We offer daily pay, PTO. We also do like an extra day where on their birthday they can take it off or they can get just we try to be creative. We're looking into a points recognition program right now, and we do have a referral bonus. So we have all kinds of stuff that we try to make sure that the team members feel valued and you know,
Yeah,
yeah.
I love that.
Me too.
There's one here from Athena. Any insights into hiring in the professional field, specifically attorneys or CPAs? And Robin, you alluded to that a little bit. And I'll open it up, but what I will say is that we have had, the benefit of having, one of our partners, Nicole Hanscom, on the call on our webinars, who does a lot of hiring for lawyers. So I would, or working with people who hire for lawyers, and I would for sure suggest like kind of, looking at some of the content that we've created, like co-created with her. And I'm gonna say a more general answer, but Tamlin, I'm sure you have some amazing insights. But like one of the things that she's often talked about is that she will use DISC as a tool. Like there's DISC to kind of like assess sort of what someone's motivations are and how to manage them and kind of like those types of things. But I think for roles like lawyers, one of the things she does is she wants to see their level of commitment and the rigor with which they approach the process itself. And so that becomes a mechanism for her to do that. I think a lot of the fundamentals still apply, but I do think for those kinds of roles, you probably have to be a little bit more creative about sourcing. But I think the idea of still kind of assessing like what is important to that role and that function is going to translate across the board. Tamlin, what else would you add
I
there?
agree. I totally agree. Every role every industry, and every market, like location that you're in, changes the hiring like process and results so dramatically. That is why coaches and SRMs are just like Gabby mentioned earlier in the call that Scout, she's moving into a new market. She'll talk to Scout. Do that, rely on the support structure that we have at Wizehire because it is the best that I've ever. I know I'm a little biased, but part of the job is competitor comparisons, and I can't find anything like it anywhere else. So yeah, I can't speak to the specific market that you're in, but your coach can or your SRM
Yeah.
can, and that if you want like the real insight and the real suggestions for to help you make a strategy, that's the way to do it because the coach will dig with you. So do
Um,
that.
I'm sorry, was someone? Oh, maybe that was me. I'm going to quickly answer this question, but then I want to give everybody an opportunity to kind of share a closing thought. One question, a little bit more, I think, job seeker focused, but like with the rise of automated resume screening, what is the best way for a candidate to ensure their application actually reaches a human? The truth of the matter, I don't know that you can ensure that. I think you can work your network, whether that is LinkedIn, whether that is going to the company and kind of seeing who works there and trying to send them an email. I think that this is, something that we hear kind of from job seekers. And I think this is also, we do advise and kind of work with the businesses that we work with to set up a system and try to build communication so that they can let people know that their application has been received and been reviewed and kind of just let them know. So, so we do recognize the importance of that. So I want to give everybody an opportunity to just share a closing thought for folks on the call. And I'm gonna start with you, Tamalyn. I'm gonna start with Tamalyn. I'm gonna go with Tamalyn, Gabby, Robin. Like, what's your closing thought?
Yeah, I mean, I think I used it in the last response. Really, my plan was to close with stressing the importance of utilizing the tools that Wizehire has to offer, and the most important being that human support aspect. So we're here for you would be my closing thought. And the more we talk to you, the more we learn, and the better we get at helping. So please reach out and ask us questions.
Gabby?
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing. Like, make sure you know everything that Wizehire has to offer. We take advantage of that a lot. Today, actually, Scout is coming in at our 3 o'clock every Thursday. We have a training call with our general managers and any hiring managers about property, and she's coming in, and we're gonna go over everything Wizehire and make sure that if they have any questions, and just kind of like a refresher because they do forget some of the features. So we do take advantage of that. So, yeah.
Robin? Closing
I'm
thought?
just gonna piggyback on both what Tamalyn and Gabby said. I will say that Wizehire continues to impress me with the level of customer service. That is not something that we've ever, in my 15 years of practice, that we've ever received from any other platform. And they provide invaluable knowledge. They will look at the details of the job posting, and we're constantly asking them questions. But my also takeaway from all of this is what I'm going to do when we get off the call is start uploading my current jobs to AI, so that AI is seeing more of that, because we're kind of just in that integrating it as now. And also like back to social media and make sure that we're showing that we're hiring on all of our social media platforms continually, because I think if you have a post in there once or twice a month, then, people are going to reach out to you independently. Even if there isn't an active job, maybe they see that you were once hiring 2 months ago and they started seeing things about your business that they liked, that could bring them in.
Yeah.
So this conversation as a whole has just brought me more insight into what we can implement, in all of these platforms just to try to stay ahead.
Yeah, yeah, that's the name of the game. Well, thank you all so much for the conversation. This was fabulous. Again, we'll share the recording. We'll share a one pager with all of these insights. And, as per usual, feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
guys. Have a great weekend.